Today is the 84th Security Thought Leadership webinar. And we've been here every Tuesday and Thursday, we're at a slightly earlier time today, to discuss a topic of central importance to the security world. And the idea of thought leadership is not to solve the world's problems, but to raise issues, to create new thinking, to take a different stance. In order, by thinking differently today, we get a better type of security tomorrow. Rather interestingly for me, universities around the world are now referring people to our webinars to get insights into issues. And today, we're going to do a topic that is a gap in understanding. What is the state of the security sector in Russia? What will the role of private security be in a post-COVID-19 world Russia? And once again, I have three expert panelists to talk us through the issues. As is normal, in a minute, I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves. And once all three have done that, I'll invite them to make an opening statement. And then I'll invite you, the audience, to ask any questions. We've got some in advance today, such as the interest. Please, can you use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen? And if you use that button, I will endeavour to include your question in the discussion. So question and answer button, get your questions in early and I'll endeavour to include it. So without further ado, let me introduce our panellists, or let me get our panellists to introduce themselves. And first of all, let's go to Dmitry.
Yes, hello everyone. My name is Dmitry Budanov. I've been in commercial security for 28 years and I'm facilitating a number of projects in man guiding, supply chain, business intelligence, retail, mentoring, and many others. Thank you.
Thank you, Dmitry. Nabi, can you introduce yourself, please?
Hello, everyone. I'm Nabi Abdullayev. I'm a partner of Control Risks, responsible for the company's business in Russia, former Soviet Union, and Israel. We are not a security company. We are a risk consulting company, but we do support our clients in security situations as well. Thanks.
Nabi, thank you very much indeed. And finally, Sergey.
Hello, everybody. I am professional in internal control, internal audit, and internal investigations. In my profession more than 20 years, and now I'm a president of Russia ACFE chapter.
Fantastic. Thank you very much indeed. Well, another expert panel, as you can say, each representing a different part of security. And as is normal, what we're going to do is we're going to invite each of them to make an opening statement. 3 minutes for them to talk about their views on this subject matter. We go first to Dmitry. Your opening statement, please, Dmitry.
Yes, so there are a number of things that I wanted to really go quickly today. Well, first of all, yeah, we're going to touch obviously the security trends and private security trends today, which is different, obviously, public and private sector. And they have different challenges, different problems and different issues to deal with on a daily basis during COVID and after COVID. But the things that I wanted to say, well, talking about general security situation in this country, the trends are, the main trends are, obviously, we've witnessed that is quite a lot of new growing crime trends like fraud, like organized crime, pretty petty crime, and some others. At the same time, we see that talking about the private security, for example, that lots of private security companies are actually going out of business because they're facing different kind of challenges, operational and financial as well. The main three things that I wanted to say about private security industry today, and we're going to obviously discuss it later as well, is that the private security at the moment is, I would say, fully regulated. I can comment later what I mean. That the private security sector in general is a little bit, I mean, the way it's organized is a little bit out of date from the legal and operational standpoint, because, well, let me remind you that the first law that regulates private security and detective services in this country was adopted back in 1992 and was not changed much since then. And the biggest issue I think that we see is that unfortunately the private security industry in general is not really transparent, and in many ways is not really compliant when it comes to, for example, multinational companies operating in this country and dealing with some private security companies, whether it's physical security or it's security consulting companies. It's basically, it's irrelevant. So this is the sort of the scope I mean, this is the pitch where we operate. But much more challenges that we can, and we will discuss, but I want to stop at this point and hand over to the next speaker. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dimitri. Very interesting. As you say, we'll come back to that in a minute. Right, let's go to Nabi. Nabi, your opening statement, please.
I will look into the current situation from the corporate point of view, not so much from the security point of view. And based on our conversations with our clients, which are mainly international companies operating in Russia, and actually looking into the Russian official statistics of crime, I would say that our evolution of the security sector in Russia is client-driven, and the client demands change. And COVID had a really serious impact on the behavior of many actors in this sector. For example, according to the Russian Interior Ministry, theft, as Dmitry mentioned, was up by 40% in Russia last year. And theft with the use of IT equipment was up to 70%. So what we are observing is that two main factors. First is the COVID and related change of social behavior when people no longer are coming to work, for example, and working from home, is increasing the surface of attack for criminals. So this is one factor that affects the crime situation here in Russia. And the second one is also COVID related, but it's a continuation of the general economic trend in Russia, is worsening of the economic situation. And coupled with COVID, it results with really poor prospects for the Russian and international companies here sometimes. And this stimulates opportunistic behavior, both of companies and individuals. For example, we had clients who come to us and say, when we are firing people or dismissing people, yeah, they're stealing laptops, cars. They try to make a final rip-off from the company, as they understand that the company is going to either sack them or close altogether. I can talk more about these real-life challenges that our clients face here further down the road. I'll stop here for now. Thank you.
Nabi, thank you. We'll definitely come back to you on that. Sergey, your opening statement, please.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for organizing this event, because a lot of people don't know so much about business security in Russia, of our audience. And I will try to discuss today the main things that influence on business or corporate security organization in our time. These three things is big data and Internet of Things and intelligence. All these three main things we have to discuss together to understand that our business security now going to the risk-based estimation of level of security companies. That's all.
Thank you very much indeed. Okay, there's our three opening statements. Let me come back and ask you questions. Just to say, audience, if you'd like to get a question in, please use the question and answer button at the bottom of your screen, and we'll endeavour to come to you. Dimitri, you mentioned about regulation, and Paul Jacom has sent a question in advance when he wants to know what are the problems with regulation? More specifically, Dimitri, what's going wrong and why is it not being put right? And Nabi, maybe I'll come to you from a corporate perspective on where that leaves us afterwards. Dimitri first.
Yes, as I said, the the law on private security and detective services was adopted back in 1992. I also said that it was not changed much since that time, except for one thing. The one thing changed actually, and that thing was a few years ago when the multinational companies that are involved in security are not allowed to conduct any business in Russia for the last few years. Physical security companies that need to get licensed to actually conduct its business in Russia. So that's the only change. Otherwise, it's pretty out of date. What we have is that it's actually the law regulates private security and detective services. So now these days, detective part of this law will most likely be separated from physical security, but it's still work in progress. So it's just began, maybe last year or a little bit earlier, but it's still early to say anything. What else? What else? I think that's
specifically, Dmitry. Why? What's the problem? Is the standard of security services low? Does everyone get a license who's supposed to get a license?
Yes.
Okay. So everyone has to have a license.
Everyone has to, if you want to do, for example, if you want to be involved in physical security, then the company has to obtain an operational license. Same with, well, detective licenses are different because they actually obtained personally by individual. These are individual licenses obtained by detectives themselves. For physical security company, yeah, you have to obtain a license, operational license, and you receive it from police. Police. One of the departments of police is actually monitoring activities of private security companies. And at the same time, you keep in mind that police is also competing with private physical security companies, because they also offer same kind of services on the market. So there is a little bit of competition here as well. So they regulate and they compete at the same time, which is interesting.
Dmitry, it's also, just to clarify, this is very interesting because many of our audience won't know this. So the police sell their services to the private market.
Exactly. There is a department within police that actually offer the services for physical protection of assets to corporate entities, to companies operating on the market.
How amazing. Okay.
Yeah, and I did research on this topic, if I may.
Yes, please.
This is the largest task force in the Russian police that counts hundreds of thousands.
So it's very lucrative for the police.
It's lucrative for the police, and also the number of people within the Russian police who is doing it, I think, the bigger than if you take all other private professionals, like, taken together.
Wow. Okay. So now, but let's talk about this then a little bit. So, what's the logic of having one part of the police that sells legislating the private sector? It sounds like it's not fair to the private sector.
It is difficult for me to comment on this issue. I think Sergei is better positioned.
Okay, Sergei, well, let's come to you. And in a minute, Nabi, I'd like to come back to you about the economy and the impact it's having. But Sergei, very specifically, tell me a bit more about this relationship between the police and the private sector, which is a massively big deal in every country, I think. Sergei.
Yes, thank you. The relationship is very similar the relationships in any other countries, because we see a lot of ex-officers of police and other structures who go to corporate, to business, and became a chief of security of such companies. So the collaboration of typical security service of private company with police forces and is a very high level. Yeah, because if you work for corporate security, sometimes you need to access to information that is not in open sources. For example, you need to know the phone number of fraudster. This phone number can be registered on another person, so you can go to police and ask them help.
Okay. And do the police sell that information or do they give it for free?
It depends on situation, it depends, but usually this is interpersonal contacts, and they personally me never paid for information, and people who I know, they also not paid, because it's interpersonal, it's professional contacts. If I need something, they give it me. Then they need something, I give them.
Okay. Okay. Well, this is getting more fascinating by the second. Now, but let me come back to you now, because I just want to talk us through this bit about the economic climate and the impact this is having. So you mentioned a couple of things there. It's driving a crime wave, certain types of theft, for example, but at the same time, companies are going out of business. Security companies are going out of business. Is that right?
No. I didn't say about security companies going out of business. I talked about all companies, actually.
Okay.
The thing is, the economic situation is really tense here. And for example, we expect a wave of bankruptcies of companies, not security companies, but companies here in Russia, both Russian and quite a few international companies are also pulling out. And this stimulates opportunistic behavior from employees. And actually this creates a market niche, or expands market niche for security companies, because corporations and Russian companies, they actually need support, and this support needs to be very calibrated. This is something that you may not buy from police.
Okay, that's an interesting point, though, for Nabi. And remember, outside Russia, we don't know a lot. So, what's the advantage the private sector has over the police? What's better about the private sector?
The thing is that the private sector is hired by corporates or by individuals, and then there are contractual relations. So the services and the conditions under these services are being delivered are falling under civil contracts between two entities. And thus, this relationship is kind of legally protected. It's not, I don't mean that this is a protection that you get when you are working with a law firm. There is no such thing. But this relationship is legally protected. For example, if you deliver bad service, you will not be paid, or you will have to kind of recover losses or repair the situation. With police, you are dealing with the state, even if you are hiring them. I mean, their indemnity is quite limited in this situation. Moreover, the pay is higher in the private sector. And therefore there are more professionals in this sector, in the private sector, and these people can sort problems that have combined nature. For example, corporate fraud. I mean, you cannot bring a cop to investigate your books, while companies like ours, or similar companies on the Russian market, can both provide a wide range of services, from internal fraud investigation to political analysis to business intelligence to due diligence, background check, and you just name it, cybersecurity, monitoring, trainings, these kind of things. Police, in this sense, is quite limited.
Okay, very interesting. Dmitry, let me come back to you if I might. Dmitry, I want to ask a specific question, which is inspired by a question from Ewan Grant here. And Ewan's talking about the reaction of the security sector during COVID-19. Now, what has been the Since COVID-19, has the role of private security changed, and what will be the ongoing impact of that? Let me come to that first question first. Dimitri, and you're on mute at the moment, Dimitri.
Yes. Well, first of all, as I already mentioned, the COVID situation actually took quite a lot of players from the market, talking about the private security companies, especially the small ones. Or middle size ones as well. The large companies, they also suffer because of the same reasons, because we all sort of stay somewhere in the chain, right, of services, and we financially responsible for people who work for us, etc., etc. So the pain is basically shared by all players of the market. Um, uh, for those who have very limited knowledge of private security industry in Russia there are currently 25,000 private security companies officially registered and having official licenses issued by police authorities. I think that at the end, within the next year or two, we will actually witness quite a lot of these people going out of business. The second thing is what we actually in the security industry, what we feel is people retention and people outflow, because a lot of businesses are concentrated in large cities, like for example Moscow and St. Pete. They probably generate roughly, I don't know, maybe 20 or 30% of all the business for private security overall in the country. So, and a lot of people who actually and it's an army of people, right, that are actually employed in private security, officially over 1 million people, but I believe the figures are much higher, right? So, which means, and a lot of these people are not really interested in staying in Moscow and St. Pete and continue to work. So they come from different regions, so they prefer to go back home, sit there and wait while things calm down. And then, which means that to actually keep these people motivated and keep them, delivering the services is becoming a big issue, and it's elsewhere. It's not only physical security. If you talk to the, I don't know, cleaning business or any sort of business that is associated with people and people resources, where you have to source people from somewhere, actually face the same issue. So I think at the end of the day, within the next maybe, I don't know, 1, 2, 3 years, I think that the physical security and the private security industry in general will change. And it's not only because there will be separation between physical security and detective services, but I think that we talk about the approach of the businesses, and that there's a lot of cost saving going on, etc., etc. So there will be a new reality in a way that private security is going to be facing. Plus, in addition to that we already said earlier today, that police is taking a serious lead in this sort of competition, if you want, right? And they're using this opportunity to actually take bits and pieces. That's something that private security is not able to maintain anymore for various reasons. So, and we see quite a lot of examples of this competition where police was actually successful. And I'm not saying that they're doing a bad job. They're doing it differently, right? And if we talk about, for example, for multinational companies, they do it so much different that the internal culture, if you want, of multinationals are not adopted to the way of dealing with the local law enforcement agencies. If we talk about making official contracts, let's put it this way.
But Dimitri, just on this one point, when you say there's a new reality for private security, is it a better reality for private security or a more difficult one for private security?
Yeah, it's more difficult, I guess, because another issue that is probably worth mentioning is that it's really been, as I said at the very beginning, it was poorly regulated. So, for example, comparing to some EU countries where there is a minimal hourly rate, right, when it comes to physical security, so you can't pay the guard less than a certain amount of money. In Russia, the situation is different. So, which means that a lot of players on the market, they have to really go price dumping to maintain their business, and they're facing quite a lot of other challenges. So I think that it's going to be more challenging than it is now.
Okay, okay, very interesting. Sergey, would you agree with that it's going to be more challenging for private security as we move forward?
Yes, of course, and I talk about it, about new technology. For example, Internet of Things allow us to control behavior of our employees much more effectively, but we should to know how to operate with this big data we receive from different sources of Internet of Things. And so we should use the methods of intelligence to handle all this big information, and it changes all our technology of work for business security dramatically. I absolutely agree.
Okay, but let me just begin to understand this, if I might, Sergey. So I understand the point about the Internet of Things and technology is changing the nature. I understand that. But for private security, my instinct would say it increases the opportunities to offer advice. It increases the skill sets. Is that the case?
Yes, but now we see a big difference between a real qualification of our security professionals and demands of to know how to operate with high technology, big information, and it's a very hot topic now.
And is the private security reacting well to the opportunity?
Yes, I believe so, because I provide trainings, and it's I told it's a hot topic now.
Okay.
How to use big data for example, for internal audit.
Okay. Okay. Nabi, I want to come to you because you said something very interesting in your introduction, which was introducing yourself. You made it clear you did risk management as part of the security response.
We are not a security company.
Yeah, okay. And there are many people around the world who would say the same thing, rather interestingly. But you also said, Nabi, that of course, much of your career has been in a different role outside of security. So you come to, let me ask you this question, Nabi. Is the private security sector in Russia seen as a credible partner by corporations and by the police? So just take those two separately. Generally speaking, would you say that the private security sector is seen as a credible partner? Because elsewhere in the world, this is a challenge. It's a challenge in the UK. It's a challenge in America too. So I'm just trying to understand from your point of view, is it credible, or is the fact that it competes for low pay for guards, does that mean to say that it's got a reputation for being associated with poor practice?
I will give you a very Russian answer. It depends.
Right.
So it depends upon who we are talking to. For example, the market has several segments. And for example, if we talk about large Russian corporations like oil corporation, gas, banks, or whatever, they have their own security departments. And these departments are often staffed by veterans of police and the security services. They're very efficient and they don't need outsiders. They don't need outsider services for them. So then there are international corporations. And then there is, of course, a certain lack of confidence in police. And these companies work with companies like Control Risks or high-profile known companies like Dmitri's Elite Security and several others of this kind. And for them, this private security offer that we have in Russia, that's actually well, we work for them for many years. This means that they're satisfied. So they are interested in developing this partnership and keeping it. And if we talk about our cooperation or the way how the government or police or law enforcement look at us. I think Dmitry and Sergey may comment on the Russian side of this, because since I work for an international company, we actually don't interact with them. I mean, we mainly work for international companies who would not be buying services from police. So we're in different segments of the market. Russian private security companies, they do compete, as Dmitry said.
Okay. Let me move on though, Dimitri. I'd like to ask you a question that's sponsored by Mike McBride, and his question is about. We've got quite a few questions coming through about the relationship between public and private. Okay, about the relationship. It's quite a few questions. Let me ask you first, Dimitri, then you, Sergey. The question is about, do private security have to store their firearms in police armories? In other words, we're trying to understand the extent to which one is seen as expert and one is seen as not expert in different areas, and the relationship between the two. And rather interestingly, not unusually, the police regulate private security. So to what extent does it extend to collaborating in areas like arms? Dimitri first, then Sergey second. Dimitri.
Well, first of all, police and law enforcement actually fully control the turnover of firearms in this country. And actually having firearms or using firearms, especially if you're a private security company that offers services to large multinational companies, is going to be a challenge. And a lot of multinationals, international companies, they actually refuse to have even the idea of having a guard with firearms on the premises, which I think makes a lot of sense, because the law that actually regulates the turnover of firearms in this country is quite draconian. And so it's better not to have firearms and to use firearms than to use them at any opportunity. But the other question is that, well, there are two ways of how you're dealing with police in terms of firearms. Well, if you're a private security company, you have a license, you're supposed to have, and you actually have a license to have firearms, then you're supposed to have an armory room on premises, and it will be licensed by police again. So the police will actually make an audit and make sure that it's actually comply with the standards and requirements. Another way, and police was actually pushing this through, and I think not in Moscow, but probably in some of the regions, some of the players are facing the situation when, building an armory room on premises might be a difficult situation. So what they do, and challenging financially. So what they do, they actually rent the firearms from police when they have an assignment. But it's very rare situation. So you will not come across the situation frequently, but there are cases like this. Yes.
Interesting. Sergey, just a comment from you on this, please.
But Dmitry said all, and more important that firearms are not very wide used by companies. It's absolutely regulated question in Russia, and it's very difficult to get a license for company to have some weapons.
Okay, thank you. Sergey, let me stick with you though, if I wouldn't mind, Sergey, because a question from Keith Nielsen. And I think, Sergey, Keith will ask a question that many will be interested in. And he's asking about the conflict of interest between the police on the one hand and the private security on the other. Surely they have got different interests if they're in competition. So it's very difficult to work together, isn't it, or not?
Yes, but some details are very important. Really, the police forces have their own goals. They have a plan how much they should find special kinds of crimes, and they have a shortage of personnel to do these big plans. And of course, the collaboration between private security department and police are inevitable. but they have slightly different goals, and so sometimes they don't don't want to collaborate because it means, for example, if you ask police to help investigate some case, they can investigate it even more harmful way for company then you can do it by your own personnel.
Yeah, okay, and that's not unusual. I mean, I think that would be the same in the UK. I mean, one of the reasons why companies do it here, they can control it, and they like that. But one of the issues is, and perhaps you could guide me, Sergey, about who should answer this question, that Simon Chan and one of the other questions has asked about. In Europe, for example, there is a big control about what information you can give. That we have a law which says, if I have your information, I can't share it. And if I ring you up and ask for details and you give it to me, it's illegal. So the question from Simon Chairman and another anonymous questionnaire is, do you have laws regarding restricting the flow of information between private and public? Is there a restriction between the two?
This question is to me?
Yes, Sergey first, yes.
Yes. Okay. Yes, of course, we have a federal law about personal data, and every company should follow this law. And this law is very similar European regulation or private data. But the specific of Russia that this law is not so, how to say, so strictly executed by, because you have in private companies security department, they have the same people who came from police after retirement. And of course they know each other, they share information about, for example, fraudsters. I know some special groups there, for example, microfinances organization, security departments contact each other and they exchange personal data of fraudsters, for example. And it's not so strictly limited like in Europe.
Interesting. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to move on to a few other questions now. Navi, I'll come to you with a question from Peter French, who I think is a good question for you, actually, Navi, who says, how professional is the internal corporate security manager considered by the business community? In other words, just if I could clarify, Navi, you've already said they can be quite skilled, the corporate security departments. I understand that. But do other professionals in the corporation, do they see them as professionals as well? If I went to finance or personnel or the chief
by all means, in Russia, heads of security, heads of internal security, they wield a lot of internal power. And it's not just because of this position, it's just, if we talk about large corporations, it's veterans from law enforcement and security with a lot of access and with a lot of informal power that they can bring to the help of the company.
Okay, that's interesting. That wouldn't be the case everywhere in the world, but that's interesting. So Nabi, just one point on this professionalization of the group. So is it possible someone could be head of security and go on to be a chief executive? Does that happen?
No, very seldom.
No, I don't.
Okay.
So.
Okay, it's very unusual around the world. I was just checking.
Yeah.
Dimitri, one
final... Unless it is a private security company.
Yes. I understand that. Yeah. Finally, Dimitri, James Griven asked this question, Dimitri. What formalized training is there for security? And I'm talking, I guess, about security officers. You mentioned that they're regulated, but it's very low pay sometimes, or it was mentioned. Do they have to be trained to get a license, Dimitri? And is it demanding?
Yeah, there are 6 type of private security licenses in Russia. The highest one, number 6, is basically allows the private security officer to carry firearms, others not. So basically, to obtain such the license, they have to pass, all security officers, security guards have to pass special training, and they have to confirm, actually to pass the same training on a yearly annual basis. So every year they have to do a certain number of hours to confirm their license, right? In addition to very basic security skills, they also train to do basic stuff when it comes about to first aid or the dealing with some emergency situations. For example, when there is a fire alarm goes off or something, so they have to know exactly what they're supposed to do according to the law. And as I said, they have to pass this training every year. In addition to that, many of our clients, for example, they have additional training, and private security companies, they do additional training for their people, like special training for shooting or some additional exercises. Not very common thing, but a lot of private security companies do this.
Okay, thank you very much indeed. I'll come just to a final question, Nabi, very, very quickly, if you wouldn't mind, Nabi, because we're running out of time. Radik Havlis has asked a question. To what extent is risk management understood as a key component of security controls? In other words, are security risk assessments an initial part of what security companies offer? You mentioned you're about risk. To what extent is that understanding ingrained? Very briefly, Nabi, because we're running out of time.
It depends upon the company's experience, just like a person. Once you got slapped very seriously, you start treating it seriously.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess the thing is, Nabi, are qualifications like international qualifications, are they important in Russia, like the ASICPP or the CSIM or the CS?
It also depends upon the clients. Some clients require people with qualifications. Some people just trust companies by reputation, and some companies may stake on the reputation of a certain person who is the account manager, the contact person for them. So if they trust him or her, yeah, they will work with you.
Sergey, Dmitry, very final comment.
Let me add real quick. Formally, there are no requirements from the employer to a security manager to carry any certifications. So the certification like PSP or CPP or some others will not give you any advantages unless this certification is required to do a certain work like information security or IT security. Then it might be necessary to have.
Okay. Sergey, Dmitry, Nabi, thank you so much for your time. That was absolutely outstanding insight. I have to say, we must do this again because that was really, really insightful. I know that I could tell by the questions that were coming through from the audience that they, like me, share an interest in finding out more. And that was fantastic answers. So thank you very much indeed for that. A few final comments from me, if I might. Just to say that in the OSPAs, the Outstanding Security Performances, nominations are still open. You can still enter in Nigeria and South Africa. Stand by. Other countries are opening soon. One thing you might want to do, the Outstanding Security Performance UK OSPAs is going virtual this year for obvious reasons. Thursday, the 25th of February, register. You will never seen a virtual ceremony like this. I promise you, this is a virtual ceremony with a difference. Sponsored by Team Software, come and join us on that day. We've also got a research survey going on the impacts of COVID-19 on physical security. Could we have your views, please? We'd like to know what you think. So please do that, and we'll send you some details about how to link to the survey. And finally, to say, we go through it all again on Thursday. We're here every Tuesday and Thursday. Today we've been talking about Russia. On Thursday, we're talking about Southeast Asia. What does the new normal look like? So today we learned about Russia there. Find out about Thailand, for example. Find out about Malaysia. Find out about Singapore. The earlier time, 8 a.m. UK time. So thank you very much indeed once again to you, the audience, for asking your questions, taking part. Thanks especially to my panel, Sergey, Dimitri, Nabi. Don't forget, everybody, there's a copy of this webinar on the website tomorrow alongside a blog. Wherever you are in the world, until we meet again, and I hope it'll be on Thursday morning for the Southeast Asia webinar, wherever you are, until we meet, stay safe.